What's going on, everybody? I am the Kilted Cajun. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a couple of months since I've been gone. A lot has happened in my own personal life, and kind of, I'd taken a little break, and then all kinds of other stuff that made me take a longer break and a longer break and a longer break. But I digress. I hope everybody's doing well on this brand spanking new year. In this video, my first video of 2023. We're going to have a little discussion about how to kill your show before it even comes out, starring HBO's The Last of Us. Writer Craig Mattson. In this article from The Gamer, The Last of Us showrunner says death in the game mean less. Oh my God, correct. Wow, I'm already thrown off my train of thought by the title of it. Let me go over this again. The Last of Us showrunner says death in the game mean less because it's just, quote, watching pixels die. Am I? Oh God, this is, yeah, I'm a nitpick. I'm a grammar Yahtzee. And this, oh God, I'm smacking already. Oh Jesus. This kind of thing drives me up the frickin' wall. The Last of Us showrunner says death in the game means less because it's just watching pixels die. Compares death in the game to that in the upcoming show. Now, anyone who's really played video games, well, we're going to get into it. In the article, it says an unfortunate fact of life that those who aren't into video games will never truly understand how much more engaging it is than any other medium. Now, this first sentence in the article, I could agree with wholeheartedly 100%. We have different mediums in our entertainment industry. As far as music, of course, is an audible entertainment. Some music videos, thank you MTV, gave us a visual with the audios that enhanced the music. Of course, we have books that goes back towards the dawn of time where you're allowed to use your imagination. You put yourself in the book, but you are still a viewer of the story. Then you have television and movies, and of course, just like you're watching here, YouTube channels. Thank you very much for sticking around. Those, you're watching them through a window, essentially. You're not part of the story. You are watching the story play out, and you gain emotional attachments, depending on the show. You gain emotional attachments to the characters. For me personally, one of the more recent shows I watched would be Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and as I was watching that show and the character deaths actually got to me, I was shocked, especially one in particular. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but one in particular, I actually yelled at my television. I really did, genuinely, because, why the hell are you going to do that to me in a show? This was a cartoon, a far future cartoon. We allow ourselves to become emotionally attached, invested in the characters that we read about or that we watch, and in the sense of video games, which I firmly believe is the epitome of entertainment, because it allows you to genuinely become part of the story. It is an art form that you actively participate in. It requires the visual aspect in entertainment. You have to be drawn in. It has to be aesthetically pleasing, whether it is realistic, cartoonish, like realistic in the sense of the Call of Duty games, cartoonish in the sense of Cuphead and World of Warcraft. But essentially all these games have a theme. Numerous other channels have spoken about the theme of the graphics of a video game. In order for video game graphics to be beloved or popular, they don't necessarily have to be realistic. They just have to be, I guess, consistent across the board when it comes to the theme and, in my opinion, aesthetically pleasing. The other part of video games is you have to be able to tell a good story and make the player's choices feel meaningful. And that is something the powers that be don't seem to understand when it comes to video games. They think video games are a waste of time, just mindless waste of hours. But hey, hours wasted having fun isn't wasted. But anyway, as far as any other medium goes, like I said, I believe you can still become invested in the characters in a video game. But some people would not agree with you. Like, what's his name? Craig Mattson. Where was I? While everyone who has played a story-driven video game has surely at some point read a book or watched a movie, the reverse is not true. Meaning, there are so many people who will never understand the storytelling power of video games. That's a problem. Give it the credit it's due. And occasionally it shows. Boy, does it ever. The gamer, you're writing a good article. Given what we know about The Last of Us thanks to the game, you can expect quite a bit of violence. Yeah, not according to another article I might talk about. I'm probably going to talk about it at the end of this. Anyway, however, according to the upcoming show's screenwriter, I thought he was a showrunner. Make up your mind. Craig, I know they're the same thing. Anyway, Craig Mazin. Mazin? Would that be Mazin or Matson? I guess two Z's would be Matson. So we're going to call him Craig Mazin. It might have a bigger effect in live action than via video game. Now here's the quote that is absolutely just, I don't know if uneducated, maybe pretentious. Quote, when you're playing a section, you're killing people, and when you die, you get sent back to the checkpoint. All those people are back, moving around in the same way, said Matson in an interview with The New Yorker. That's a shame. Quote, watching a person die, I think, ought to be much different than watching pixels die. Oh, you mean like watching people die in, since we're doing, post-apocalyptic zombie-style games, what about The Walking Dead? Do you think when Glenn had his skull bashed in, he was gone? You think that had more of a dramatic effect than the comic book? I've got some bad news for you, Chief. This is a ridiculous notion. The idea that just because it's pixels on a screen, that the person playing the game is not as emotionally invested in said characters as they would be if they were watching live action. Maybe he's talking about the blood and gore and guts. I'm sorry. I've been playing Callisto Protocol, and holy crap, the death scenes are amazing in that one. And by amazing, I mean they are inventive. They get repetitive, but they're different. They're interesting. I'll use the word interesting. Wow. But to think that it's, especially with the realism in the graphics with some games nowadays, it's the photorealistic nature of video games and where they're getting to today, there's almost no difference in the deaths you see on television versus a death you'll see playing a video game. The idea that, oh, it's on TV and it's real people, so obviously it has more weight to it. If you believe that, your head is too far up your own ass for you to see what's coming. It says, while what Mazin says isn't entirely true, how about it's not even remotely true? He does have a valid point. No, he doesn't. In a game, The Last of Us, in this case, we're expected to kill and even be merciless at times. I love this one. Considering how many AI enemies you may have killed over the years, this isn't something that would disturb you. Oh, you mean kind of like killing zombies in, again, The Walking Dead. The main characters in that show kill zombies, walkers, and they kill other humans, and they do it in a cold, heartless, methodical manner. They're not bothered by it because essentially the cast, the extras in the show are nothing more than a generic NPC in a video game. There is no difference with them. Just like when a major character dies in a video game. The original Final Fantasy VII. Oh my goodness, I can't remember her name. So we'll move on. When she dies, when Sephiroth, I remember Sephiroth's name, when Sephiroth kills her, it was something. That hit me, and those graphics were terrible by today's standards anyway. Story fantastic, put over 100 hours in there back and then. Anyway, that death was just as meaningful as watching Glenn get his shit pushed in The Walking Dead. Watching a character die. Watching one of the characters die in Sons of Anarchy, in Game of Thrones, in a show like that. And obviously coming up in The Walking Dead. They're probably going to kill Joel. Anyway, it's just as meaningful. It's just as impactful to the person watching it, or in the case of video games, experience of the story, if they allow themselves to become invested. Now, the investment part, I believe, goes across all mediums. If you allow yourself to become invested in the video game that you're playing and interested in the story, then the death of a character in a video game is going to mean something. The same thing if you're watching Sons of Anarchy, Walking Dead, or Game of Thrones. If you allow yourself to be invested in those characters, you become interested in those characters, and all of a sudden some schmuck gets his head chopped off, well, that comes as a shock, and you don't know where the story is going to go after that. You don't know what the next episode is going to bring you, because you've become invested in that character, and now all of a sudden they're gone. There's no difference. Just because it's pixels on a screen, if the story's written well, just like, in a TV show, unlike She-Hulk, that was an abomination. If the story's written well, you can allow yourself to become invested in the show. To sit here to say he makes any sort of valid point is preposterous. At least not after the first few times. However, watching Pedro Pascal force a blunt shiv into a firefly's neck, holding him down as he dies slowly and painfully, is bound to disturb even some seasoned gamers. Chief, you don't know gamers. Something like that isn't going to bother them. At most, if it's done well and true to the video game, true to the source material, they'll be impressed and interested. Now it says, oh God, Neil Druckmann. Jesus Christ, that fuck. Elsewhere in the interview, Mazin and Neil Druckmann discussed how Joel would not be the unstoppable action hero he was in the first game. Audience will notice the wear and tear that time has had on him. I didn't play the first game. I played a little bit, a couple of hours. I got past the intro where his daughter dies. Oh, spoiler alert. Ooh, it'll probably happen in the first episode. But Joel wore time on his face. Like, you could see it. My understanding in the story, Joel was old, grizzled, tired. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all that. He was tired of everything around him, and all he wanted to do was survive. That's all he was interested in. And the story of the original Last of Us was Ellie being inserted into his life and him discovering that he could live again. My understanding, again, correct me if I'm wrong if you want to. I welcome it. I should go back and play The Last of Us. We had a conversation about the toll Joel's life would have on him. It showed off in the game. Neil Druckmann, you had nothing to do with the first one, you bastard. You stole that one. Would have on him physically. So he's hard of hearing on one side because of a gunshot. His knees hurt every time he stands up. Oh, joy. When you come out and make a statement like that, you are insulting the fans of the source material. To sit there and be so just full of yourself, for lack of a better term, to say that, oh, death in physical form, in entertainment, and on the TV, in a movie, is more impactful than in a video game, whether you like it or not, whether you want to argue about it or not, you're shitting on your fans. And you want to know how else you shit on your fans? This bullshit right here. HBO's The Last of Us will be less violent than the game. Okay. I have not read this article, so let's do it together. Last of Us is a pretty gory game. Yep, it's about survival in a post-apocalyptic world where survival is making sure you don't die. It's a series renowned for its relationships between characters. No, it's renowned for its relationship between Joel and Ellie. That's what it's known for. It's known for its storytelling, not the other characters. But it also likes to indulge in the odd, gruesome death animations from time to time. Anyone that's unfortunately been caught by a bloater and seen Joel get his... Ooh, I might have to play it now. Seen Joel get his jaw ripped off knows exactly what I'm talking about. And you have the audacity to sit here and say this shit? The game has something ripping Joel's jaw off. And it talks about painful is bound to disturb. Oh, you pretentious fuck. Sorry. Don't expect to see much in the way of gore and violence when HBO's Last of Us series airs next. It's HBO. It's HBO. It's an adult cable channel. Why wouldn't you have the violence? What's wrong with that? Are you scared to be true to the source material, Neil? Co-president Neil Druckmann has explained in a recent interview with SFX magazine, thanks to Games Radar, that the show will only keep the bloodshed to a bare minimum, pussy. He states that the reason for doing so is to give the moments in which there is violence more of an impact. Okay. I think I can understand that. Claiming that the TV format means the show doesn't need to bombard the viewer with fights as often as games do. Okay. Let's keep reading. Quote, we need a certain amount of action or violence that we could use for mechanics so you could connect with Joel and get into the flow state. Says Druckmann about the Last of Us video game. Then I can't read. Then you would really feel like you're connected with this on-screen avatar and you're seeing the world through his eyes. Okay, so now instead of actually seeing the world through his eyes and making the choices for him, you're watching a visual novel, essentially. That's what TV and movies are. They're visual novels, and that's okay. So, but that doesn't exist in a passive medium. He's correct. One of the things that I loved hearing from co-creator Craig Mattson, bitch, and HBO very early on was, quote, let's take out all the violence except for the very essential. If you're telling a good story, I will agree with this. I understand the rationale behind it. Now, can we trust Neil Druckmann and Craig Mattson to tell a good story? It remains to be seen. It's not too surprising Last of Us trailer is holding back on the violence. Cool. What about the story? Story. What's the story going to be? How faithful is it going to be to the source material? If you shit on the source material, just like you found out with The Last of Us Part 2, you shit on Joel, made him an idiot. Anyway, I skipped ahead. Where was I? We do reveal the infected and the clickers. You get to see what brought down humanity and why everyone is so scared. Okay. Last of Us has always been a series that tries to drive home the consequence. Oh God, this was an excuse he made for the ending for The Last of Us 2. The consequences of violence too, especially the sequel, although whether or not it was successful in doing so is down to individual interpretation. You mean like the hundreds, maybe thousands of individual YouTubers playing the game who didn't want to play after they were forced to play as Abby after particular circumstances in the Part 2? How many people decided to return your video game, Neil? It did bang up numbers the first week it was out, and then stores wouldn't take... Now this is stories I heard, but apparently the local GameStops had stacks and stacks of the game to the point where they stopped taking returns on it. But that could be just a petty thing for me to mention. For fans of The Last of Us, with a bit of bloodlust, let's be hyperbolic now, never fear, as there will be plenty of death in the series, although showrunner Craig Mattson believes it will hit here we go again. It will hit harder than in the game since you won't be watching pixels die. Goodness gracious. Mattson claims that due to the very nature, you putz, you absolute schmuck. Mattson claims that due to the very nature of video games and the ability for characters to die and respawn, death has more of an impact in movies and TV shows. This statement right here, like I said before, shows just how clueless you are to the nature of video games. It's true that there's more disconnect between violence in games than any... Are you shitting me? But Mattson... Okay. Alright. Back on my soapbox. There's more disconnect between violence in games than in other mediums. What kind of horseshit statement is that? How is there more of a disconnect in a video game than there is in a movie? You're watching actors week to week, year to year, do stunts and flips going from... I've watched Robert Downey Jr. go from dying of a drug overdose in less than zero to playing Sherlock Holmes to playing Iron Man and Dr. Dolittle Give me a goddamn break. I don't think he is the same person. I mean, hell, if it had that much of an impact, he wouldn't have made anything after less than zero. This is a complete and total just not understanding the medium itself of video games. There's no more or less of a disconnect in deaths in video games than there are in movies and TV shows. Honestly, no, I think it's about the same because it's a suspension of disbelief. And you know you're watching a TV show, you know you're watching a movie, and you know you're playing a video game. You know it isn't real. Granted that there are some people out there that are just, off a little bit, and they take video games, movies, and TV shows quite a bit too far. You can't blame it. You can't classify just video games as driving people nuts because, hey, we've had stalkers long before we had video games. So this is just an irritating notion for me. And like it or not, the more people hear about this, if you have that idea, they're just going to think you're a pompous prick. Who knows? Maybe it'll tune people out. Maybe it'll tune people in. I'm going to check out the show. I have so much shit to watch and finish watching. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you think. Thank you for sticking around this long. Leave a like. Leave a dislike. Hope I sub. Leave a share. I am going out of here. Y'all have a good night.